Just a couple more letters left in our lowercase alphabet. Let's take 2 out at once with our lowercase v and our lowercase w. To get started with our lowercase y, we're going to pull from our lowercase v. With these two open, I'm actually going to start with our serif because I think it'll be quite easy to pull from. So we'll pull all the elements of our lowercase v into our lowercase y. Then we want to just draw that sort of tail out here. To do that, I'm going to pull from our lowercase r. We've used this teardrop shape a number of times before, so we'll copy it and we'll paste it in here. Then what we want to do is quick flip and rotate it, and we can end it down here on our descender line. I'm going to hide it in that overshoot just a little bit because I think that's a good place to end it. Then one of the reasons we keep our shapes as individual shapes is so that we can continue to use them over and over again. I'm going to extend that right side of that lowercase v out just a little bit, and we'll start to bring in our lowercase y so it matches. We'll do the same on this bit here, keeping some of that overshoot. And then finally, we're going to adjust some of these handles so it matches what this lowercase y needs to do. Just like we've done in the past where we've cut things out so that we can join these paths together, I'm going to Command X to get rid of that one, Command X to get rid of this one, and then I'll attach these two together so that we have straight paths. Now right now I have this awkward joint in the middle there, so I'll double click and that'll turn it to a curve, which will keep it in line with the path that came before it. And we have the majority of our lowercase y. I want this to be a little bit thicker, this tail end here, so we can bring him up a little bit, and we can bring this point out a little ways so it widens out a little bit more. We can even move this up to start our curve from further up. And like we've done in some other letters, our R terminal is quite small. For our Y, we might be able to make it just a little bit bigger. In this way, we know that it matches our lowercase s, our C, some of those other letter forms that have that sort of teardrop terminal. And we really want to use that terminal to help us fill in this visual space over here. We could go so far as to bring this out a little bit further and work through making this a nice smooth transition here. If we want to be a little bit lazier, a little bit softer on that curve there. I think for me that's a little too much, so we'll just undo some of this and bring him back to where he feels like he's right. If I wanted to keep some of that taper in that original stem, so I've now adjusted this whole edge here. If I wanted to keep some of the taper in this stem here, I could go in and add another point in here, and that'll let me taper down this crotch a little bit while keeping the width in that tail so it feels like one continuous stroke, but we're also playing with our optics. So we're being really smart about how we're drawing this. Finally, I'm going to tuck him in just a little bit, maybe extend this stroke. We might move it out just a little bit, and we'll end with something like that. To go from our serif to our sans serif, and vice versa, we'll copy this over, we'll paste it here, and we've done a really particularly easy job in the way that we've designed this typeface to have both of these things here, so we'll end that up there, and just like that we have our lowercase y. Time for a quick break in the content to ask if you're enjoying what you're watching and seeing, to please subscribe to the channel because that's the best way to support what's going on this channel. If you're already subscribed, be sure to like the video, comment on it, and share it with somebody new. Alright, back to the action. Moving on to our lowercase x, we'll go into our lowercase v again, and I'm going to grab all the components of this lowercase v so we can do that serif x again. I'll copy that. I'll get out my text tool and I'll type that lowercase x. Then I'll double click to go in and start to edit it. Making sure I'm on the right layer, I'll paste in that lowercase v and I'll probably paste it in twice. What I'll do first is I'll paste that one there. I'll paste another one. We'll give them a quick flip both ways, and then we'll leave it here for the time being. One, we've got a really boss monogram down there. But two, this is where the weight of our stroke is going to end up. So I can grab these points up here, and I can bring them down to just above center. And I can grab these points here as well. I can bring them up to just above center. One of the reasons it's helpful to start with that lowercase v is because it does something really natural for us. The main stroke of a lowercase x is this thick diagonal stroke. And it is oftentimes one continuous stroke. So I'm going to get rid of this because I have excess. And I'm going to pull this path up to where I think it needs to be, where that other one started. Then we're left with these two diagonals. And these two diagonals aren't actually a straight diagonal. And this is a trick of the lowercase x, is that most of the time it's not actually two perfect letter forms or two perfectly straight strokes. I'll leave this here for the moment. And if I select everything, I'll duplicate it and I'll show you what it would look like if it were a perfectly straight line. I'll delete this and we'll bring these points up so that it matches just right. We can fix it just a little bit. And you can see in that lowercase x that the negative space of each one is a little bit different. If I hold this here, you can see there's this sort of strange spiraling tension in where those points are meeting, and that these spaces on the side are much bigger than the spaces in the top and the bottom. By splitting that stroke into two bits, it lets us open up that top and bottom counter and reduce that left and right counter. This is an optical trick that we use to help us work through that lowercase x. Right now it's quite dramatic. We could make it a little bit smaller, a little bit more hidden. So we'll quickly do that. We don't have to have so much overlap here. We'll give ourselves a little bit less. We don't need so much there, so we can give ourselves a little bit less. That way we can get these strokes a little bit closer to one another. And then again, as we've done in the past, let's get this Y to that serif layer. And let's start to type some other letters around it. That'll help us sort out what's working with this letter form, what's not. And at this point, we can just about type every other letter on the keyboard. Here I'm just going to spam everything so we get to that lowercase x and we can see how it's working. At this point, I'm pretty happy with the weight of those strokes. I'm looking at the weight of this compared to the weight of the V, which maybe I'll give a couple more of those in here. I could look at the Z to bring him in, maybe a couple of W's because we just drew those. And we're looking at the weight of those thin strokes with the weight of those thick strokes and making sure our X feels like it belongs. Looking at this again, we may have an issue in the weight of this, so we'll go in here, and this thick stroke felt a little too wide, so we'll narrow him out a little bit, widen him out there, and we'll move this over. And these ones felt a little narrow, so we'll widen this up. We're just going to arrow key to widen him out a little bit because we want to match some of the weight that's happening there. Again, we'll look at it. We'll make sure that our thicks and our thins are working together. He still might be a little bit narrow, so I'm going to bring in and move both of these out a little bit. I'm just arrow keying so that we're moving in really, really small increments. And looking at that lowercase x, he feels pretty good. He might be a little wide, so we could go in and narrow him out. To do that, we'll just grab this point here. We'll give him a couple of taps to the left, move him in. We'll move that guy in a couple taps. We'll move these in a little bit, and we'll move these guys in a little bit. I just want to make sure that this letter form feels like the others. And again, we could check our weight by bringing in that lowercase n. And when we bring in that lowercase n, now that we've adjusted that a little bit, he does feel pretty close. He might still be just a hair wide. So if I set my lowercase n over there, then you can see about where that X ends. He is pretty close though, so we might leave him for now and go back and adjust him later. Now I'm going to go to my sans serif version, or rather I'm going to copy all the hard work I've done on the serif version. I'm going to paste them into our sans serif version. And to do this, we're just going to pull these feet all the way down to the floor, all the way down to that baseline. And ironically enough, we're going to end with the letter X by pulling its strokes up to its namesake, that X height line, and bam, we're going to be done. So just like that, we've managed to make our way through that lowercase alphabet. The lowercase alphabet is really the hardest working part of a font. It can be helpful at this point to look at a typeface and see how it's going as a whole. We can do that by going up into Window and opening the text preview. The text preview will give us a typeface, and it'll give us a demo of what our typeface is doing. We can see it doesn't have any of the capital letter forms, and yours will probably come pre-populated with a set of text. Mine's pulling text that I've used before in the past. But you can start to see how the whole typeface is working. We can look at our serif version, and we can look at our sans serif version. We can look for things like holes or things that aren't working. Right now it looks like my lowercase f is doing some crazy things. I'm looking for things that are too dark or strokes that are too heavy or sticking out. But it's a great place to start looking and seeing what our typeface is going to do, and going in and manipulating things where they need to be before moving on to our uppercase letters. I hope this video was useful for you and helpful, and you learned something new along the way. If you did, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and be sure to like the video and share it with other type nerds out there so we can get more people designing beautiful typefaces.